Okay, we've mentioned the term ethnonym on and off over a number of sessions. And what I want you to begin by doing is at the bottom of the screen you will see, or in the comment box in YouTube, you will see a link to two movies, two very short YouTube videos, and I want you to begin by briefly looking at these as a way of reminding ourselves about what the issues of ethonyms are. And so if you follow that link, you press on here.
Hey, good evening. My name is Kevin Ateru. I'm making a small video to go with my petition. The petition basically is aimed at a human rights violation. The violation, people's right to self-identify themselves in their own language and ideology. The most prominent infringement we see is with the European colonization.
So, exonyms, autonyms. What do we mean by this term? An ethnonym is a general term to talk about the word we use to describe an ethnic group. An ethno-linguistic group, an ethno-linguistic group. An exonym is a word that is used by outsiders to describe a group that group wouldn't use about themselves at all. And so, for example, a wharang is an exonym. People outside of Thailand have no idea what a wharang is, and very few wharangs would refer to themselves as a wharang. Although after we've been here long, we might, to make it easier, we may begin to use this exonym, even though that is not our preferred autonym. An autonym is a word used to describe ourselves. And so, Thais, so Central Thais would prefer to call themselves Thais. Malays in the south would call themselves Oge Malayu or Nayu, and different ethnic minorities use different words to refer to themselves. And some of them are not really understood or recognised by others. Okay, so our topic today is ethnonyms, and what I'm going to do, because this is an electronic course, and it's an electronic course which is primarily a course of directed reading. This is an electronic course which is bringing together a range of media with a range of electronic media, with a range of electronic books. We're putting these together. We're placing them and we're making them available in a way where you don't have to spend any money and very little time. And we're going to be basing our talk today. There are a number of very good summaries of ethnonyms and exonyms and autonyms and how these have changed over the years. And this article is a relatively recent piece, and the lead author is Christian Culas, and he's a French scholar with IRD, which is a French organisation. And he has provided some very nice analysis of autonyms and exonyms and ethonyms in the part of the world where you are probably more familiar than me. So a big criticism of this course could potentially be that I don't do much work on talking about upland ethnic minorities in Thailand. I talk about the Khmer and the Mon and the Malayu and the Chinese, but not necessarily about the Akar and the Lahu and the Karen and the Hmong. So, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some of the issues of naming, of classifying, of people classifying themselves, and of governance categorizing others, in a range of countries, nation states in mainland Southeast Asia, particularly Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and southern China. And there are a number of case studies involving Aka groups, Thai-speaking groups, and Mon Khmer speaking groups. And so let's just remind ourselves about the construction of identity. First of all, naturalism is a doctrine that maintains that social phenomena exist before being categorized, and independently of any effort to categorize them, they exist in nature or essence. So constructivism is the doctrine according to which social phenomena do not exist and independently of work undertaken to categorize them. And so if you have a constructivist position on ethnicity, you believe that this is a social phenomenon which is constructed, it doesn't exist. So let's go to full screen as we go down this. So there are other constructions of ethnicity in addition to social construction. The construction of ethnic groups via names. Giving a name to an object is one way to give it social existence and sometimes to appropriate it for oneself. Always think in terms of reciprocity. If the state names the ethnic group, then what name do the ethnic groups use for the representative of the states? Ethnicity is also constructed in a third way, the construction of ethnic groups via the passing of laws. And we talked about this in a different way when we looked at the racialist laws of Nazi Germany. Passing laws can set limits on what is an ethnic group and what is possible and legal for ethnic groups within the state. Laws are also a way of integrating ethnic groups within the state system. Has the state consulted the ethnic group at this point? The answer is almost always no. Heuristic advantages of constructivism. If social phenomena are constructed, we can try to understand how, by whom, and with what aims. This allows us to ask questions about the process, about exchanges, about dynamics, and social change, and how it works. The diversity of ways of designating ethnic groups over time in different countries shows three things. The arbitrary nature of designations. So sometimes these are chosen by the dominant group, not by the group themselves. The way that ethnonym transform over time. They are not immutable. And the political nature of these designations. Ethnicity primarily is about politics. So here are just some examples provided about the way in which ethnic groups are referred to in different countries. In US, the preferred term is minorities. They may be black, Asian, Asiatics, Hispanics, and the origin of this terminology is the 1960s, and when human rights legislation was being pushed through by the democratic governments of Kennedy and Johnson. And these involve laws including affirmative action and laws against discrimination. In the USSR, we talk about nationalities, ethnic minorities. These were cultural groups, and in Russia there are 128 nationalities. In China there are 56, and in Vietnam there are 54. So in this in the socialist system, we talk about nationalities, not minorities. And the origins of this are in communist concepts of ethnic groups, and that originates in Stalinism, especially after the Second World War. Specific regulation of rights, the number of children, but also cultural constraints. So, for example, some ethnic minorities, some nationalities in China are able to have more than one child. In France, these are referred to as cultural groups, cultural communities, and that there was official ban on using the term ethnic group in France. What type of groups exist in France? We have Basques and Catalans amongst others, Roma as well. In the origins, there are some important legislation, and the importance of the French Revolution can't be overemphasised. In Australia, terms are used such as Aborigine, that there are over 1,000 distinct groups of Aboriginals, and there have been a number of regulations, laws in Australia protecting their rights. So in different countries, people have talked in different terms about ethnic minorities, nationalities, cultural groups. So what is an ethnic group? Is it a group with specific objective characteristics? Are they linguistic? Are they territorial? Are they cultural? Is an ethnic group a group that defines itself as such by a specific name, a common sense of affiliation or commonality, in the words of Brubaker? So is it affiliation? Is it commonality? Is it groupness? Defined thus, all groups belong to one ethnic group or another. A group which is defined as such by others is another option. And is this by the dominant population? Is it by official classifications? So one is a authority-defined ethnonym as opposed to an everyday defined ethnonym. So let's have a look at a case study of Thai, of the relative nature of labels. And we're looking at the Thai viewpoint and the Aka viewpoint. So, for example, Aka divide would refer to and divide people in these different ways. So these are emic, insider terms used by Aka to refer to different groups. Now, there are others who would refer to similar groups in very, very different terms, some of which you will recognise, such as Thai Lu and Thai Dam and Lao. So, how and why do we make ethnic classifications? Well, first of all, they are descriptive in terms of taking stock of things they are, and they are normative in pursuit of some objective. You want to make something normal. What could be the normative objectives of classification? To create a stable list of groups to facilitate identification and representation of population, notably with a view to assuring national cohesion. So that's the first answer to why and how we make ethnic classifications. What are the potential basis of classification? Well, choice of name, choice of divisions and groups. It implies a unique and fixed ethnic affiliation, and it implies choices which reflect the viewpoint of the classifier. So in almost all countries, ethnic classifications have evolved. And so this is true in Thailand. So, for example, in the south of Thailand, Muslims were just referred to by elites in Bangkok as Kag. That's all, Kag. All of the earliest accounts, the Thai accounts, it was Kag. And then after that, it's called Malayu, and over the last few decades, there's all sorts of ways that Malays have been referred to. And so in Lao, people were referred to as either the Thai or the Ka. After that, there was a separation between plains Lao, lower people, on the slopes, Lao who lived on the slopes, and those who lived in the mountains. And since 1986, we have more scientific classifications, and these are on most of them based on language, the Taikari and the Austroasiatic, the Hmong, Mian, and the Sino-Tibetan. So these are more scientific classifications. From generic definitions to emic designations. Now, an emic position is an insider term, what people inside a group call themselves. Generic designation means that a term designates a group of things which we think have numerous points in common. For example, ethnic groups is a generic term which encompasses numerous populations that are different, which are different but all ethnic. Emic designation means the term is used by the ethnic group themselves. We distinguish emic, which designates a way of thinking and talk described by people themselves, from etic, which refers to ways of thinking and talking described by people outside those studied, researchers, state development projects, neighbours and other groups. So for example, Hmong is an emic term used by that group themselves. And regardless of whether we're looking at the 18th or 19th century, 1900 to 1950, 1950 to 2010, as well as in the future, there are all sorts of ways, different ways, that that groups have been designated in Vietnam. And so some people refer to folk as wild men from the north, for example. Hmong are referred to, the present-day Hmong are referred to in different ways in the 19th century. And so these are just some examples of the way in which we designate ethnic groups. The ethnoyms that we use have changed and developed over the last 200 years. And again, it's important to remind ourselves that when talking about ethnicity, we are dealing almost inevitably with issues of politics. And so ethnicity and ethnic studies and ethnonyms and exonyms are far more than anthropological issues. Let's go out of full screen now. We can go out of full screen now. They are far more than just anthropological issues. They are political issues because in most parts of mainland and island Southeast Asia, linguistic minorities in the past were political entities. And so the ethnonyms used, the range of ethnonyms used between Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar and China These have changed for all sorts of reasons, and some of them are political. That some of these were semi-autonomous kingdoms. They weren't nation states in the modern term, but they had a degree of autonomy and were different in all sorts of ways, which we only know now through the history books. And so in mainland Southeast Asia, if we are wanting to say something sensible about ethnic issues, one of the first things we need to do is to be aware about whether the words we are using to refer to these groups are they exonyms, are they ethnyms, are they autonyms? If they're exonyms, do we want to continue to use them? And if we do continue to use them, do we want to just remind the readers, I'm using this term, but I'm aware that this is not the preferred ethnonym or the natural autonym of the people that I am referring to. And we will be talking more about this fascinating issue of ethnonyms again later on. I hope you've enjoyed this. See you again.